G'day everyone, Gus Worland here, and I've got a very special guest from Banksia, and it's Jack, who's doing a brilliant job pivoting in these very unprecedented times. How are you, Jack? How are you feeling, mate? How are you coping with what's been going on?
G'day, Gus. Yeah, I'm doing well. It's been, as I'm sure you know, and everyone else who's listening knows, it's been an interesting time. And I think to say it's been an easy time is probably not being true to myself and everyone out there. I think we're all feeling a little bit different right now, and that's really, it's okay. But also, I think what's really important is we're all in this together. So, you know, you and I have had a few chats during this interesting isolation period, and it's just important that we keep these conversations going and we're honest about how we are going. And how are you going during this time, Gus?
Yeah, well, I'm very similar to you, mate. Ups and downs, great days, not so good days. I actually lost someone close to me yesterday, my auntie, who was very, very influential in my life, and just not being able to go to people today in particular, you know, and like we'd go around to people's houses, put the kettle on, talk, you know, reminisce, hug, cuddle, look after each other. So what we're doing now, we're on a WhatsApp and we're sending, you know, hundreds of photographs around and everyone's commenting. So we're doing the best we can. And I think that's all we can expect. And that's absolutely okay, which is like you said, it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to bumble through stuff. Tell everyone what Banksia do, Jack.
So the Banksia Project's all about mental health and well-being, but in a preventative manner. So we try and teach people practical skills, going beyond that awareness piece to say, this is actually how you can deal with challenges when they arise. This is how you can stay healthy and happy, focusing on some really tangible life skills that people can implement in their life. But we achieve this through peer-based programs. So we provide education and tools and structure to community members to say, we want you to go and support your own community. That's a lot more relevant than an external facilitator, an external provider, upskilling local community. We prefer to train that community to support each other. So we run programs which are peer-based. They're all about peers supporting one another through life's ups and downs, talking about the really good things, which is important, but also some of the challenges they might be facing. Learn some really practical skills. Most importantly, have a safe space to just talk about whatever they need to and process whatever they need to without being judged or any fear of who's listening or how that might reflect on them. And then we provide some clinical support. So our community volunteers have access to clinicians to make sure that if anyone in our programs is struggling a little bit, they've got that support they need. In a nutshell, that's it.
I know what brilliant work you do. So congratulations, mate. And I know that you're the powerhouse behind so much of the good stuff. So explain to us how you've been able to pivot in this time and what you've been able to do to keep going.
Mate, I thought you were going to tell me to get up and pivot, and I was going to say that's going to be dangerous. But no, it's been an interesting time, as I said to begin with. It's been interesting for everyone, but I think what's been amazing to see, what we offered before perhaps was considered a little bit ostracizing. You know, people thought it was weird to need a little bit more connection and support. It's not something that was normal to say, look, I do actually need connection and support. I think what's really interesting that I'm noticing right now is everyone is saying, you know what, get some connection, get some support, reach out to people, whether you have them or whether you need to find them, go and do that. So previously, I think what was a little bit ostracizing and probably a little bit strange for people to do, to say, yeah, I probably do need a bit of extra connection, right now is really normal. And what I'm noticing is that's making our programs a lot more normalized, I think. And they should be normalized, but I think a lot of people still have that underlying association with, you know, it's a bit strange to need extra support or something must be wrong. But what we've done massively is we've been able to actually adjust our programs so they're delivered virtually. So all of our programs used to be a face-to-face model, a group of about 8 or 10 people coming together regularly to support each other. We've now been able to do that virtually. Our groups used to run monthly. We've adjusted that to run weekly during this extra period of isolation that we're all in. I think it's a bit of a boiling pot, you know, where we're either spending a whole lot of time away from other people, which we might need that extra connection, or we're spending all of our time in too close with other people. depending on who you live with. So I think it's really important that we can provide that extra touch point. Our weekly programs have been delivered virtually. Now we've obviously, with the virtual model, we've been able to deliver to people all across Australia. We've had people from, Warrnambool, we've had people from rural New South Wales, we've had people from Perth reach out, and people who have been following our message for a long time, but unfortunately haven't been able to access the face-to-face service, are now a part of it. We've also, in our pivot, have been able to adjust our programs to both men and women, where previously we had a male focus. We've been adjusting our mixed groups to have men and women, because I think right now everyone needs that little bit extra connection, and we want to provide that to whoever needs it. So it's been an amazing couple of weeks getting it all happening, and exciting, as you said. I do find that I am driving a lot of it, which has taken up a lot of my time, but it's amazing to see what we've worked so hard for, starting to come together and develop the momentum we've always hoped for.
And Jack, what do you think's been the reaction to the pivot and the fact that it's on virtual? You did mention the fact, obviously, there's some people there that normally wouldn't be able to grab the service. They've been able to do it, but just building the safety within a virtual environment rather than that, 8 to 10 people in a room. How's it working out?
Look, it's something that I think if someone had spoken about this 6 months ago, I'm sure if we had this conversation, we probably both would have gone, I don't know how that would work. And, me as well, being my age, I probably wouldn't have even known how to use Zoom. And I know people my age are meant to know how to do it, but I've got no clue how to use computers. So things like that. But then there are a lot of, I'm not going to use the old word, but wiser blokes in our programs that wouldn't have had a clue how to get on Zoom and have one of these meetings. But I think it's becoming quite normal to be using tools like this to connect with people around us. Because as you said, the normal conversations and face-to-face, we're not getting that. So we need to find other ways to adapt. And so we've actually found the dynamic has been phenomenal. These groups have come together weekly, but not only that, they're now coming together every day. They're messaging, saying, "Oh, I've gone and done this. I said I was going to go for a run this week. I've done that." We've had some guys sending in. They said music is their outlet, and they've been sending in videos of them singing, and it's just been phenomenal. Some of the feedback that we've had from these programs, one guy I can think of off the top of my head who just said, I got off that call and I started counting down the hours till the next week. He goes, I feel like I've got another 6 or 8 mates around me now that can support me through anything. So when you get a message like that, and I know you've had them, you get that message and you go, all the blood, sweat and tears has been absolutely worth it. And the programs are just beginning to build. So we've launched an extra 6 in the space of a week. We're now about to launch another 3. We've launched with sporting teams to keep them connected. Obviously, they're not spending time on the field. We've launched with Ronald McDonald House in Sydney. Some of their parents and families are becoming a little bit challenged, obviously.
Yeah.
So we're really just trying to support as many different groups and in the wider community as we can.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear, Jack. And you're right. Some days you think you're banging your head up against the wall, then all of a sudden you get a message like that. And you just go, wow, that's some person who's reached out. And then there's a whole lot of people that are getting some good stuff, but just haven't quite got it in them to send you that note yet, for whatever reason. So that's brilliant. Jack, some tips on how to deal with isolation. Have you got some for our community?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. And again, these are take it or leave it. People, what works for you might be different. But I'd say that for me, the most important one is accept how you're feeling. I think a lot of conversation has transitioned to, this is the time we've got to change the world. This is the time we've got to plan everything and talk about how we're going to take everything on. And I think one thing I'm really trying to emphasize is not everyone is at that space yet. And if you're not there, that's okay. We're creatures of habit. We're creatures of routine, and our routine and our habit has been rudely shocked. So I think what's really important is it might take some people a lot of time to process this and to become normal in this space. So I think we need to really just be mindful that not everyone is in the point where they're going to, take on the world, come up with a new business that's going to change the way we all work and live. It's important that some people need to just sit with the feelings and process what's happening and continue to do that. And if that's all they can do, that's okay. That's probably my number one tip. Does that make sense, Gussie?
Yeah, totally. In fact, I've probably lived to that to a certain degree too, Jack. I've had a couple of days where I've just smashed out Netflix and haven't necessarily been eating the best food and didn't get up for a walk or a ride. And then other days, bang, 5:30, up, showered, shaved, out there, having a run, doing my thing, contacting 3 or 4 people I haven't contacted, and then 2 days feeling a bit flat and just getting through it. And then you're up again for another week or 10 days. So it's been a big part of my life too, is letting people know that it's absolutely fine to get yourself into a bit of a funk. If that goes more than a couple of days, then there's probably a time to speak to someone and try to get some help. But, you know, if you have a couple of days on the sofa and you can't get out of your jammies, you know, don't knock yourself out.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably enjoy those couple of days. It's not often we get chances to do that. So if you find yourself an opportunity to get in the jammies for a few days and sit on the couch, then enjoy it. And if they want, I'm happy to switch and I'll jump in my jammies and they can get nothing done. So no, that's probably my number one tip. There's a few others I've got. I think that probably one of the most important in such an interesting time is focus on good sleep. And each person's going to achieve that in a different way. But I think we all know that if we're not sleeping well, everything else just goes to crap. So look up things like sleep hygiene, working out how you can sleep well, get yourself to sleep in a good way and keep that routine. That's out of my expertise. I'm not going to pretend like I know about it, but if someone is sort of listening, I definitely recommend doing some research on how they can control their sleep in a better way. Physical well-being, I think that goes without saying, and we've already touched on it today, but trying to get at least 30 minutes outside moving, some fresh air, some sunlight, and if you can tag that on with some 1.5 metre distancing with a mate, get a coffee while you're there, it sounds like a pretty good deal. Yeah. But making sure movement, that fresh air and sunlight. One of the others for me, I think, is self-reflection or self-awareness. I think we're all going to be a little bit uptight at this point in time, or there are going to be things or triggers that we're all sort of facing at some point that right now could be rearing their head. The example I use is, you know, when I talk about my own mental illness, there was time where I had to stop and reflect and face the things that I probably wasn't facing when I was packing my day beginning to end full of, you know, catching up with mates and work and family and all that sort of stuff, where I think right now we're all being stopped and we're all being forced to stop and reflect. So I think it's really important that some people may have challenges rearing their head right now. The things that they probably don't necessarily want to face every other day might become more apparent in this time. And so I think it's important to recognize that and perhaps have that conversation with the people closely around us, because, you know, your partner might notice you struggling more than normal or becoming a little bit more uptight. And if you can have that really healthy conversation in advance and say, look, I am a bit uptight right now. This is challenging me a little bit. So can you be mindful of that? And that's a really healthy conversation to have in advance. And hopefully that person can have that conversation back with you, so that you can have that healthy dynamic proactively, rather than waiting for it to blow up and then, you know, potentially going south. Does that make sense?
Totally. It just takes a lot of emotional muscle to have that conversation, though. And that is something that you can learn at Banksia. You can learn at Tomorrow Man, Tomorrow Woman, and all the programs that Gotcha4Life support. And, you know, it sounds great, ticks the box. I know what you're talking about. I try to get ahead of the curve as well. But there's a whole lot of blokes and girls out there that just not quite there at that spot. But listening to it being normalized and people are doing it, it might just push us that little bit closer to getting where we need to get to. Mate, it's always a pleasure catching up with you, Jack, and continue doing what you're doing.
That probably leads me to my last point.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Connection. And you sort of touched on it, that if people are feeling, you know, that might be a tough conversation to have, or they just want to connect, that's really important right now. Connect with the people around you. If you're struggling to do that, or you're struggling with not having potentially people around you, that's where you reach out. You know, the Banksia Project's virtual growth rooms are for connection and support. There's Tomorrow Man. Waves of Wellness are now running their online, their surf therapy program online. There's a whole range of programs that I would really recommend people connecting to and finding that extra connection, support, and perhaps learning how to have that conversation, like you just said, Gus. Sorry to interrupt you there, but that's the
No,
most important.
you're absolutely right. And there's Man Anchor as well that we support, and all of those partners. I've had chats just like I've had with you just now, with all the different principles of those areas, because it's so important to get across what's available and what Gotcha4Life love and support. There's so many of us out there doing great work, and we wanted to highlight all the good ones, and you've done that exactly for the Banksia Project, Jack, this afternoon. So keeping on, big fella. Keep doing what you're doing, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the next week or two. And just thanks so much for your time.
Happy to help, Gussie, and keep well and stay safe.
I will do. Thanks a lot, Jack.